Good evening. It is 6:40, and I would like to call to order the September 2021 monthly meeting of the Arlington Naacp. We will open up with prayer from our Vice President, Mr. Dwayne Braxton.
I'm on mute. Oh, I'm good. Let's pray. Eternal God, our Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity to come together as the Arlington branch. And God, we just ask that you would be with us as we go through the business of this organization. God, we ask that you would bless those who are on this call, bless those who are not able to make it. And God, we ask that you would continue to be with our president as she presides over this meeting. We pray that you would continue to bless those who are in charge of this country and making decisions for people. And we ask that the NAACP will just continue to be the leaders that you have called us to be, to help with our advocacy and for just taking care and looking out for individuals who stand in need. So God, we just thank you. We love you, praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I have another commitment, so I am going to get the business portion of the meeting started and completed, and we will then turn over to our program, which is our guest is Mindy Cochran, who is with the Arlington Housing Authority. And so we'll talk about the city's rental assistance program and take all your questions and hear what the city has been doing and what challenges they have faced in trying to assist people to stay in their homes. But first, I just want to go over some updates. Of course, all of you are aware of Governor Abbott's signing of the most restrictive and blatantly racist voter suppression bill in modern times. He signed that bill into law, I think it was last week, that prohibits things like drive-through voting, 24-hour voting, and tactics that make it easier for people to cast their ballot. The Texas NAACP immediately filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas, and a bevy of other organizations did as well. LULAC, ACLU, the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. So there are a number of lawsuits filed against the state for this new law. So just pay attention to that. Also, redistricting. This is a once in a decade process, and it will determine the allocation of political power and representation at every level of government for the next 10 years. And that means locally as well as statewide and at the federal level. And it will impact future policy decisions of nearly every civil rights, civil liberties issue that we care about. And the redistricting process is already underway across the country. Some people ask, what exactly is redistricting? Well, when conducted fairly, redistricting is a redrawing of the lines based on population shifts and growth. And when it's done fairly and properly, it can accurately reflect population changes and racial diversity, and it can help equitably allocate representation. But when politicians use it to manipulate the outcomes of elections, the process can undermine our democracy. And so we really can't let that happen. Voters should be picking their politicians and not the other way around. The city of Arlington has established for the first time ever Citizens Redistricting Committee, and it's made up of residents elected by city council members and the mayor. This year or this time, they allowed the NAACP and LULAC to appoint to have a seat on the redistricting committee. However, those seats are uh, non-voting seats, but we will have a voice. And we do have other NAACP and LULAC members who are appointed by council members on the redistricting committee. You know, we're going to be posting information that educates and explains what redistricting is, why bother with it, who conducts it, how we can make sure it's conducted fairly, what the lines look like, what they, should look like. And so we do have a committee. We'll be educating the public via our social media channels and websites because we need people to pay attention, and we need folks' activism around redistricting. Economic development opportunities. The City of Arlington's Office of Business Diversity will host a procurement webinar for Arlington-based chambers of commerce and business advocacy groups like ours on Wednesday, September 29th at 10 a.m. The webinar's purpose is to inform small and minority and woman-owned businesses about several bids and requests for quotes that are scheduled to open up in the next several months. The city has furnished a flyer with listed projects along with the Zoom link for registration. So we're going to post that again on all our communications channels. And you can also find detailed information on the city's website. They'll soon be requesting bids for, and this is just a sampling, print services, ground maintenance, IT temporary staffing, and services supporting fleet management. So if you know folks that own those types of businesses, please let them know to go to our website, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and find the flyer and register to attend this procurement webinar. And the NAACP's Economic Justice Committee, we pay very close attention to what the city is doing and the opportunities that our people that look like us, African American business owners, are getting or not getting. We've said it 1,000 times. The city does not do a good job of retaining African American businesses. Their numbers are pretty bad, pretty low. And so they've assured us that they are making efforts. And so we are consistently on top of what they're doing and not doing to ensure that they make changes and improvements. In addition, speaking of, the city has expanded its MWBE office, Minority Woman-Owned Business Enterprise Department. They had one staffer. They have two, and I think they will be hiring 4 to 5 people to man the new MWBE department. The new MWBE manager is Erica Thompson, and Reginald Cleveland is still there. And I think there are a couple to 3 other openings that will be coming open soon. In addition, I can't think of the name of the other department. It's going to be equity or economic development, but I think it's economic development. That office is is being put together now. They are seeking a chief equity officer. So if you know experts, professionals who this is what they do, this is what they've been successful at, let them know about the chief equity officer opening. In addition, the city is looking for a director of transportation and a director of parks and recreation. So again, if you know qualified candidates, let them know about these opportunities and uh, have them to let us know that they applied for these positions so we can keep an eye on them. But again, City of Arlington is seeking a chief equity officer and additional staff to fulfill openings in the economic development office. I think that's what it's called, a director of transportation and a director of parks and recreation. All right. The Texas NAACP State Convention takes place virtually. It's a virtual convention and it takes place Thursday, October 7th through Saturday, October 9th. We will get the registration information posted in the coming days. Tonight, we need to elect delegates to represent the branch. So we have 6 delegate slots and we have 2 alternate slots. So I need to open the floor for nominations to serve as delegates. If you are a dues paying member of the Arlington NAACP, you can nominate yourself or be nominated to serve as a delegate. The state conference is I've looked at the preliminary schedule. There will be COVID information, redistricting information, voting rights information, just a bevy of civil rights topics that we will be dealing with at the state convention. Again, it's Thursday, October 7th through Saturday, October 9th. So I'd like to open the floor for nominations for delegates.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Billy Wilson.
I'm sorry, I'll be at the Raider game that weekend.
Thank you.
I was going to nominate Dwayne Braxton.
I accept. Madam President, I'd like to nominate Damian Gardner.
Damon.
I accept.
Okay. We got 2. Come on, come on, come on.
Madam President, I'd like to suggest Ms. Solomon, Cheryl Solomon.
That's a good
If she's
idea.
willing to.
Cheryl.
Yep. I accept.
Cheryl. Okay, good. Good, Cheryl.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
need 3 more.
Let's see, we got Damon, Dwayne, Lisa. I was also going to say, Madam President, if you could be a delegate as well.
I accept.
Madam President, I'd like to nominate Tahani Manning.
Tahani, do you accept, Madam
I
Secretary?
accept. Sorry,
Thank you.
I accept.
We need 1 more. Oh, can I nominate?
Yeah.
I'd like to nominate Pastor Kennedy Jones. And I'm sure he accepts.
Recording in progress.
Do we have others? Do we need 2 alternates?
And we need 2 alternates.
Can we get any volunteers for alternates?
Can we
Do you have
nominate
to be
alternates?
available during day hours?
I don't think on Thursday when I looked at the
It's
preliminary
evening
schedule,
normally.
it's mostly evening. They
Yeah,
have like a pastor's roundtable that afternoon and something else, but no voting on Thursday afternoon.
Okay, so I can be an alternate if it's evenings.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You need one more?
One more.
I want to nominate the Washingtons, either Belinda.
The Washingtons. Okay, I see in the chat, she said I can.
Okay, awesome.
Madam President, I move that we close the nominations on the said names.
Okay. All right.
A second.
It's, okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to close the nominations on the names presented. And do we need to vote? Or,
Yes.
okay. All those in favor of the said names being our 6 delegates and 2 alternates indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We are about ready. Is Mindy on? Has she joined us? Okay. Hey, Mindy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to have to step out. I'm relinquishing the chair to Mr. Vice President Dwayne Braxton. Thank you so much, Mindy, for joining us today. We are talking about the housing rental assistance and the Arlington Cares program. You are familiar with Jill because we've been on multiple calls together, and she will take over from here. So thank you all. Mr. Vice President.
Dwayne, you're mute.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to make sure that we have taken care of all the business that we need to. Is there any old business that we need to conduct at this time? Any new business that we need to conduct at this time? Hearing none, we will close our monthly branch meeting at this time. And we will move forward to Jill presenting our speaker for the evening from the Arlington Housing Department. So Jill, if you will take the mic now and move forward, we would appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. Okay, so today we are going to speak with Mindy today, and we're going to talk about the housing authority benefits that we have from, I'm assuming this is the CARES Act, so I don't want to misquote that, but it's a rental assistance for anyone who has been impacted by COVID. So Mindy and I have, along with Jason and Elisa, we have been trying to do everything that we could do to try and ensure that the citizens of Arlington knew about the program, how to, what they needed to do to qualify, how to apply, and anything that we all could do collectively to try and get this message out. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mindy and allow her to give a brief background about herself, and then we'll just kind of engage in some dialogue on the program. Okay, Mindy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mindy Cochran. I'm the Executive Director at Housing here in Arlington. A little bit about housing in Arlington that's a little bit different than it is in some communities. One of the reasons why is our housing authority, all of our staff are also City of Arlington employees. And that's a little bit unique. So if you look at our neighbors in Fort Worth, for example, the housing authority is completely separate. The employees there are not City of Fort Worth employees. It's a very separate entity. So here in Arlington, we're combined, and it's in a way it's really nice because we've got everything that a housing authority can do and all the activities that the city can do and the grant programs that come to the city, we can really coordinate our efforts in doing that. And I'll give you a good example. When we first had this pandemic start, the Treasury didn't have these dollars available, but City Council very quickly moved to reallocate some community development block grant funds, which are very, very flexible federal funds from HUD, to make that available for emergency rental assistance. They have a lot of restrictions and they can be a little bit difficult to use, but we could pay rent for folks for up to 6 months to keep them from being evicted. So we very, very quickly moved to do that. The city also applied for funding through the state to do emergency housing as well. So we ran those two programs up until about March of last year, 2021, when the Treasury rolled out their first set of money. So at Housing, our largest program that we administer here is the Section 8 program known as Housing Choice Voucher. Arlington doesn't have any public housing. I hear a lot of times about the public housing over here or the public housing over there, and we don't have any public housing in Arlington. We manage a Section 8 program, which I love because it really gives people a choice on where they want to live. If you have family that lives in East Arlington and you want to live near them, you can live near them. If you have family that live in South Arlington or your job is in South Arlington and you want to be close to your job, you can do that. So that's what I really like about the Housing Choice Voucher program compared to public housing, which basically says if you're going to receive the subsidy, you're going to live right here, wherever that structure happens to be. So the Housing Choice Voucher program is much more family friendly, I think. So because we push out rental assistance every month for about 3,500 families through the Housing Authority, our systems were really already set up to manage a program like the Treasury rolled out. So when the city of Arlington got those dollars, they asked if the Housing Authority could manage it. The short answer was yes. The long answer is yes, but not with the staff that I have now because they already all have full-time jobs. So over the past, I guess it's been what, 6 or 8 months now, we've hired 24 folks, brand new full-time employees that we get them through a temporary agency called Cornerstone, which the city has a contract with. We've hired 24 people. Most of them are in the process of taking applications and getting money out the door. We do have some, though, that are in the finance field because we're already paying about 900 landlords monthly rent for our existing 3,500 families. Now we're adding a lot more families and a lot more payments going out. So we needed support within our finance group as well. So we very quickly started converting our conference room into office space. We outgrew that almost immediately. We rented additional space in our building, set up 10 temporary workspaces, cubicle type workspaces. So we've got about 13 folks back in that area. We've got another set of folks in our conference room and every available empty office in our suite of offices here. And then just this past week, we demoed our boardroom. I told our board last month, this is your last meeting in the boardroom. We demoed the boardroom, so we're putting in another 10 cubicle spaces there so we can continue to expand. We've had a little bit of challenges in doing that. Some of it is because if you've tried to buy a computer or a car lately, you've run into the problem with the chip shortage. So it's hard to get computers sometimes, hard to get phones, but we're making it work. We're getting through those processes. And we're, like I said, we're up to about 24 additional staff. So a little bit about what the program does. It's called the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and it's administered through the United States Treasury, which is a little bit unique because most of our housing programs come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So this is very different. I see a question in the queue, are the 24 employees temporary positions? They are temporary positions, but they're long-term temporary positions. We expect to need all 24 of them for a minimum of 12 months, potentially longer. And then we'll scale down into maintenance mode once we get to that point. So the U.S. Treasury, having a program like this is also very new to the U.S. Treasury. So they've been working their way through the processes, learning from other programs, They are frequently publishing frequently asked questions so that we all, as all these different agencies throughout the United States are administering these funds, can kind of refine our programs. One thing they did that we really love is they made the programs pretty flexible to administer. They didn't do that right up front, but over time, they've really started knocking down some of the barriers. And I'll give you an example. Somebody who was working before COVID and lost their job and the business went out of business, literally is out of business. You can't go find them to get a statement from your employer saying, I laid them off because of COVID, because the business doesn't exist anymore. So we're allowed to take self-attestation from the tenants to that effect now, which has really, really helped streamline things. We also streamlined our processes. We went through 3 iterations of application processes to the one we have now, which we think is much more streamlined. We can also import the data right into our software system. So we're real happy about that. That's been a fairly recent change. So the folks that this is helping are people that are earning under 80% of the area median income. So a family of 4 earning in the basically around the mid 65,000-ish range would be eligible for this program. So our school teachers, our cafeteria workers, a lot of city employees earn under $65,000 a year. So it's really a broad range of families that are assisted. And really the goal is to prevent people from being evicted from their homes. We had an eviction moratorium that helped us for a very long time. That has ended. The state of Texas still has a program where if somebody's going through an eviction, they can have that deferred and work with us till we can get them the rental assistance. And then they can basically have that removed from their credit history. So that doesn't harm them when they're trying to go rent somewhere else. So we're loving that that program is still around, and we'll have that into early March. The good thing is what we're finding is our landlords, I think that they've kind of are understanding that it's better to get some money, even if they have to wait a little bit to get it, than to get no money. Because they can evict somebody and they can get a judgment, which is basically a lien, a future lien, but that doesn't give them any money in their pocket. And so if they're patient and they can work with us, they can get their rent, they can get their late fees, they can get their court fees, all the expenses that they've had associated with this. They don't have to have a family move out. They don't have to do a make ready. It really saves them a lot of time and money. And obviously it really helps our families. Anytime that you have to be disrupted in a way that's not expected and not by choice, it's going to impact your kids at school. It's going to impact your job if you're currently working. It's just very, very difficult. Not the least of which is now you have to find another place to live. And our housing market is really, really tight. You know, we issue vouchers. We probably issue around 40 to 50 vouchers every month just for the turnover within our Section 8 program. And we historically in the Section 8 program, you would issue a voucher for 60 days. Sometime during that time frame, the family would find a place to live and would get them under a lease contract and start paying some or all of their rent on their behalf. Now we issue a voucher, and 180 days later, the family is still asking for an extension on that voucher. It's very, very difficult to find places to live, and more so to find somebody that's willing to take your voucher or your rental assistance from any other program. So again, it's just better for the families if they can stay in one place. So when ERAP first came out, the requirement for somebody, they had to be under the 80% of the area median income. That was the first requirement. They had to have an obligation to pay rent, be under a lease. This program does not help folks that are paying a mortgage. There is a program, it's the Texas Emergency Mortgage Assistance Program. In Arlington, it's being administered by the Housing Channel. But this program is strictly for tenants paying rent for a residential unit. And so they have to have an obligation to pay rent. And then with the first round of funding, they had to have been financially impacted by the COVID pandemic. So you typically think of that as somebody lost their job or they have less hours. We see a lot of people whose hours have been knocked down so low that they just can't afford to live. And so it was a pretty tight definition, but we noticed it didn't restrict it to just jobs. So if you had somebody who had kiddos that had to stay home. And so now mom or dad has to work from home and they can't go to work and their job's not conducive to working from home. They've been financially impacted by COVID by choice because they chose to stay home with their kiddo, but they've still been financially impacted. Or a lot of daycares closed. So if we had a daycare close and now you have to take your kiddos to a different daycare, it's either further away or it's more expensive. You've been financially impacted by COVID. If you had to have grandma move in with you and your grocery bill and your utility and water bill have all gone up to care for grandma during COVID, you've been financially impacted by COVID. So we've been really, really flexible with that definition. Then when ERAP 2 came along, it was a little bit more relaxed, and the definition basically just said you have to have had a financial impact during the COVID pandemic. So we've had people that were fired from their jobs during the pandemic. They wouldn't be eligible for ERAP 1 because it was really, they were fired, they did something to cause that firing, but they're eligible under ERAP 2. So it's gotten a little bit more flexible over time. So we're able to use both pots of those funds. So the other eligibility point is that they cannot have assistance for more than 18 months. And so that's a little bit tricky because there's a lot of different entities that are administering these dollars. So Tarrant County, the city of Fort Worth, and the city of Arlington early on in this got together and said, it's really important that we don't duplicate payments. We don't want to pay Mr. Smith's rent for the month of April by both programs. And so, and it's incumbent on us, Treasury makes it our responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So it was very simple with our neighbors. And we simply said, we're all going to play in our own backyards. I'm going to serve the people in Arlington. Fort Worth is going to serve the people in Fort Worth. And the county is going to serve the people in Tarrant County other than Arlington and Fort Worth. So we thought that was really simple until we realized that the state of Texas is also administering this program. And the state did not opt to play in the sandbox scenario that we had set up for ourselves. And so the state is administering statewide. So it's incumbent upon us to ensure that we're not duplicating benefits. So the state put together a database where we can, when we get an application and it's been assigned to a caseworker, they check to see if there's a pending application with the state. If there's not, then we proceed to process the application. Then just before we cut the check for their back rent, we verify that there have been no payment from the state. And sometimes there is. So sometimes there's been a lot of work done only to let the family know the state has approved you, we can't serve you. And sometimes they're not, and so we can continue. And sometimes the state has that payment in process, and we let them know that they need to stop their processes because we're ready to issue payment. And so we can issue payment in those cases. So a lot of coordinating going on. So, but this is not just a benefit for the tenants. This is a huge benefit for the landlords. They've got a lot of delinquency in their rent rolls, and this is a way for them to be made whole. Program designs can be different. And as an example, the state requires landlords to waive late fees and to waive court costs. We do not. We pay the landlord what is due to the landlord. If they incurred late fees and they incurred court costs, we will pay those on behalf of the tenant. So we can bring their ledger truly to zero. The reason we opted to do that is, number one, it's an eligible expense according to the US Treasury, and we have a lot of money available. Number two, we don't want to leave the tenant with a balance. You know, we can pay 6 or 8 months of back rent, and then they may have 6 or 8 months, which could be $600 or $800 in late fees, and they still have a balance that they're liable for, and they've still been impacted negatively by COVID. So we feel like if you're going to go in, go all the way in, right? If you're going to help folks, help them all the way to the end. Don't get them to the edge and let them fall off the cliff over a couple $100s. So that's the way we've been administering here in Arlington. We entered into a very, very robust marketing campaign. The first thing we started doing is working with the Justice of the Peace courts. And so we would scrub the JP records. Initially, it was very, very tedious to do, but working with the JP courts and their IT folks, we've gotten a much better system down. But basically what we do is every week we get a list of all of the evictions that have been filed in Arlington. So all of those evictions, we mail them an application for emergency rental assistance. And we've been doing that since, I want to say May of 2020. So if a name and address is on that list from the county, they get an application in the mail from us. They also get resources about legal aid and other resources that are available. We have navigators in our office. So if somebody finds himself in a position where they've never had to apply for food stamps before and they truly need it now, our staff can help them navigate those processes because people are finding themselves in positions that they've never been in before. So we've got those navigators in place. We have 2 full-time navigators to help out. We also are getting the records from the court to try and be ahead of those evictions. We're working with the Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, with Texas A&M Law School and some other nonprofits to put together resources for legal representation. Statistics will show time and time again that somebody that goes to eviction court and has legal representation, they're 85% more likely to stay in their home. That doesn't mean they don't have past due rent. That doesn't mean they didn't, or that they paid their rent. That just means they were able to have some sort of a mediation to help them negotiate a way to stay in that home, whether it's a payment plan or finding other resources to help them. But that's our goal. And so we're working really closely with legal partners and nonprofits to make that available. The other thing that we've done is a very robust marketing campaign. We do that with the city of Arlington. We hired a marketing firm, had a pretty substantial budget for that. We pushed out about 31,000 door hangers in homes in 76006, 010, and 011. Those are lower income neighborhoods that have a lot of single family homes that are rental homes. And those are also zip codes that have a high number of eviction filings. We pushed out several series of flyers to landlords via email. There was over 440 multifamily developments that received that. We also did direct mail to landlords. Our direct mail pieces were over 800 owners. A large part of that being different from the multifamily because they're individually owned units like single family homes or condominiums. Our marketing folks estimate that we had 330,000 total views from our social media advertising. We also have had gas toppers at convenience stores. So when you pull up to get your gas and you get out at the pump and there's a sign above it that says Marlboro Lights, $25 a case or however much cigarettes cost these days. Now it says emergency rental assistance and it gives them a location to apply for assistance. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of hits or haven't seen a lot of feedback on the gas toppers. We haven't had a lot of, when we get our application, we ask, where did you hear about the program? And we haven't had a lot of feedback about the gas toppers. We've done postcard direct mailings through faith-based organizations, through our nonprofits that we work with, as well as to the landlords again. We had over 90 radio spots, and the marketing firm estimates that we had 444,000 hits during that time frame. We had billboards on I-20, 30, and 287. We haven't really had any feedback on those. It could have up to 223,000 views per week. It just depends on when they're cycling through with the other rotating billboard advertising. We sent flyers to local businesses. Hundreds and hundreds of those have been taken out. We've also had signage at schools, at libraries, grocery stores, at the courthouses, a variety of different places. I think we've had almost 500 signs in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese placed throughout the community. And then we've done over 3,000, as I mentioned before, direct mailings to Arlington households. And our staff has participated in, gosh, probably a dozen or so interviews with press or various organizations throughout the community to help get the word out about the programs. So a lot of advertising going out, and we think it's paying off. We've had probably right around 3,000 applications which is quite a bit. It was very slow trickling in at first, but they're coming in very quickly now. We're not certain if it's because of the advertising or if it's because the lift in the eviction moratorium. We've had a lot of success working with the JP courts. I heard yesterday that Judge Sanders is telling folks not to apply at the state level, to apply at the local level. So we feel like that's encouraging. He was a little critical of our program when it first started and we were working the bugs out, but he seems to have become a fan of ours. We have staff in the JP 7 court during the week so that we can respond very quickly. And we participate to JP 2 and their eviction court via Zoom on a weekly basis. Also at the beginning of the week, we get a listing of the cases that are coming up for eviction. So we're able to let the 2 Justice of the Peace Court judges know if we have an application from those folks. And if so, what the status of that application is. I see a question, what about community service announcements on cable? I know we've done radio and I know we're getting ready to put the community service announcements on the VIA vehicles that go throughout the community. I'm not certain if it's been on cable, but I will check and see because that's a great idea. Thank you. Let me jot that down real quick. So I'll pause and take a breath there for a minute. If anybody has a question about the marketing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Who has a question? You can go ahead and ask a question, and I have a few questions for her after.
Okay. Actually, this is Billy. I was just going to remind people that we are doing the chat, and if they have some questions, don't feel comfortable asking. If they will, put them in the chat, please.
Okay. Thank you, Billy. Okay, I do have a few questions for you, Mindy. I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure everyone does. But how much was received by the city of Arlington from the government for rental assistance?
So the city received 2 rounds of funding. The first round was 12 million. And 10% of that goes for administrative costs like paying staff salaries, furniture, computers, things like that. And then the second round was $9 million. We didn't receive the $9 million yet. It's allocated to the city of Arlington. So as we're spending down that first round, then we will apply to get the second round of funds. We were given a very small portion of the second round, and then we'll apply for the rest of those funds. So that was $9 million. And I think they realized that their administrative fee schedule was a little low. And so 15% of that second round of dollars will go to administrative costs. So.
Okay. Thank you. To date, how much rental assistance has Arlington distributed to tenants and landlords?
We've distributed about $2.5 million so far, and we've got about just under 5 million has been obligated. And what I mean by that is, if you applied for rental assistance and we approved your application today, and you haven't paid rent since March, we're going to pay your March rent through your September rent. And then we're going to obligate the next 3 months for you. So we've got about 5 million that's obligated because those are funds that we've approved for families, but we just haven't paid it out yet because it's not yet due. And then the way that works is, so if we approve you for October through December, around the first week of December, staff will reach out to you to see how you're doing. Maybe you've gotten your job back and things are going great and you no longer need our assistance. But if that's not the case, then what we do is we recertify you, and we're required to by the Treasury, and then we approve you for the next 3 months. So we'll keep reaching out quarterly until they've reached their full 18 months of assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
What happens to the remaining funds after that are not distributed? So is there an end date that you have to have these funds distributed, or if so, yes, what's the one? I guess there's 2-part question. What is the end date, the expiration date of the funds, and what happens to the remaining funds that are not distributed?
So the funds are available through, and please don't quote me on this because I may have the month wrong, but I believe it's September of 2023. So we've got a lot of funds, a lot of time available, but I think that's an unusual date. Because if you think about how the economy is recovered thus far, we have a long way to go. Don't get me wrong, I recognize that. But I feel like a year from now, people aren't going to be applying for these funds, right? They're going to have already applied and gotten assistance. So I'm not sure what to expect in the future. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out. If we continue to get applications, we'll continue to process applications. But I'm not sure. It just seems as though the recovery will be coming back at some point, but we'll see. I don't have a crystal ball. But to the other part of your question, two things could happen actually. I'm not certain about the formula by which they distributed these dollars. There are some very, very large communities that have blown through their money. And so some could be reallocated to other communities that have a greater need if the need isn't in Arlington. And then the other opportunity we have is there's a real small, very little detailed caveat in the regulation that states funds that have not been spent by a certain date can be used for other affordable housing initiatives that serve the very low income community. So, and there's a few examples in there, but not a lot. But so you could use that to put towards other affordable housing initiatives, which I think is great, because I really feel like if there is money at the end of this, that we'd like to keep it in Arlington, because we do have a need for affordable housing here in Arlington. So if that allows us to ask a landlord, to set aside units for low-income families, I would love to be able to do that. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of more questions, and then I've seen some questions go back in the chat, and I'll allow you to ask those. But
Sure.
We had spoke earlier about using some of the, back to the marketing, some of those street signs that were throughout the city of Arlington, just some of the small electronic billboard type signs that are like on the sides of the street that may say detour left or something. Has that been implemented?
Good question. I remember asking staff to reach out to Public Works about putting those billboards out. And I'm not certain if they got out and I just didn't hear back or not, but I'll follow up on that and let you know.
Okay, that'll be great. One last question, and then I'll
Sure.
open it to the floor for everyone. We understand that, you mentioned earlier that the city of Arlington is hiring people, and you've hired what, 24 people to date. But what type of skill sets does does one have to apply for these roles, and where would they apply?
They would apply at Cornerstone. It's a temp agency that the city of Arlington has a contract with, and we hire all of our temps through Cornerstone. And what we're looking for is somebody with a strong math skill, very strong math skill, excellent people skills. It seems easy to take an application and help somebody fill it out and ask them for information that's missing. But I feel like it's really important to have somebody that has worked with people from all different walks of life and works with diverse communities. I've seen folks get in positions where we serve the homeless in our office as well. And some people are just not comfortable working with the homeless. They're scared. They've got that typical fear factor. So if somebody has experience working with the community that we're working with, I think that's really important, especially working with the low income community, because it's those things that you don't think about. And I'll give you an example. We have applications that we've received, and there is no doubt that the person that filled out that application is not literate. And so that caseworker needs to be able to call them and collect the information we need in a really sensitive way that's very respectful. We have folks that have language barriers. We use a language line rather to interpret. We've got some folks that speak other languages here in the office, but not everybody does, certainly. We've got lots of applicants with pretty substantial disabilities. And so again, to have that empathy to work with them. So that's sort of the soft skill piece, but in a more structured, like what's on your resume skill, we're looking for somebody who has experience on working with eligibility. So like we've had folks that have worked in the food stamps office, a very similar eligibility process. They're used to seeing a food stamps document. They're used to seeing the printout from the Attorney General's office that shows the child, what's it called? Not alimony. I'm sorry. I lost the word. Child support. They're used to looking at pay stubs and finding gross versus net, all those types of things. They know what to look for when they're looking at a Social Security award letter, those types of things. So that's really a strong skill that we're looking for that has that experience doing eligibility, first and foremost. Behind that, I would say somebody that's worked in a similar social service field that has strong math skills, and we could probably work that way getting them through. We have hired some folks that have basically pretty administrative skill sets, but we don't need a lot of those. And we just have a few people. And then we also have accounting staff, people that have true accounting skills to help with the back end processes that we have. So we're typically always hiring or trying to hire anyway, those folks that have the eligibility experience. Because just like every other employer, we've been hit by COVID. I had 4 of my caseworkers out recently. That's a lot. That really hurt us. Some of them we can get them set up to work from home and they can work remotely. But some of them are sick or they're taking care of sick family members and they just can't. And that hurts us when we're trying to keep productivity. We've also had a little bit of turnover. And so we're continuing to keep those positions filled. So.
Okay, Mindy, I'll let you go ahead and ask the questions in the chat and then
Sure.
I'll have a few more later. Thank you.
Bet. What's the percentage of landlords accepting funding and not evicting tenants? Honestly, I don't know. We've tried to get some of those statistics from the JP courts, and we haven't been successful in getting data that we feel is reliable. Anecdotally, both JP courts are telling us more and more landlords are willing to wait. They'll either defer for a week or two, and we have what we call our fire team. And so if we have somebody that's going to court or that has been through court and they're waiting to issue the writ, that application goes to our fire team. And it doesn't matter if we got that application yesterday or 3 weeks ago. It goes to the head of the line and it goes to the fire team. If those hit my desk, they are approved that same day. So that we can go right back to the judge and let them know, and the landlord, and let them know that the application has been approved. Is the job position entry level possible on the job training? It is fairly entry level. Like I said, we prefer to have somebody that has either experience working in the social service field or working directly with eligibility. When we get staff that work directly with eligibility, their skill set translates very, very quickly, and they're productive very, very quickly. So that's been very helpful.
On that, if I could ask you a quick question, because I noticed you said you had you had the people who are taking applications, and then you also had finance people, I think you said. So,
we do, and we also have administrative support.
Yeah, and so what are those job entry, what does it take to get into those jobs?
The accounting positions, we're looking for somebody with an accounting degree, has experience in accounting. We're fully staffed on accounting right now. I'm not sure whether or not we'll need to grow that at all. I guess it'll probably depend on how the program continues to grow. And administrative skills, we're looking for somebody who's working in an office environment, knows how to work modern office equipment, copiers, fax machines, email, good at filing, has some decent Word and Excel skills. Our Cornerstone can test the applicants to verify that they have the skill set in some of those applications that we're looking for. And that's very helpful. We implemented that not too long ago because we were getting some folks that we thought had the skill set we were looking for, and then we realized that they did not. And certainly, especially with our caseworkers, the math skill set's really important. The next question is, what percentage of the money has been spent? I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but 2.5 million of our first allocation, which is basically 90% of the 12 million. I can do the math real quick on my phone and tell you. We have barely started using the round 2 funding because we're using that for families who exceed the 15 months allowed by the first round of funding. So we've started paying for some of those this month, and we'll have September month-end reporting. And then we're also using it for those that were not impacted directly by COVID. They were impacted during COVID because that's where their eligibility lies. So 2.5 divided by 10. I'm sorry, I've got my math off. I'll go to the next question if there is another one, and I'll get the percentage for you. Sorry.
Okay, well, if I could, in just a general question, because I noticed you said that you're now working with Judge Sanders in the JP court, and that's kind of how we got brought into this. Can you give us a general feel? Because I know at that point, it was a feeling that we were having a lot of people being evicted. Can you give us a status report? How do you feel about it now? Are we servicing those people? About how many people are being evicted? Where are we right now?
Like I said, we have a really hard time getting statistics from the JP courts, but both of the judges have let us know that they're having much more success with landlords waiting on the funding versus evicting. Not always, and honestly, there's times when the eviction is appropriate. It's not because of non-paid rent. It's because of other lease violations, damaging the unit, unauthorized occupants, things of that nature. So they're not necessarily evicting because of non-paid rent. But I'm just really glad to hear, between the county and the JP judges and our advocacy, that judges are not judges, sorry, landlords who previously were not interested in the program at all. I think they're just starting to realize I can get my money. I just need to be a little bit patient. The Treasury requires us to triage the clients and serve them in a particular order. And so unfortunately, sometimes we can't serve in the order that we want to, and that's okay. We'll eventually get to everybody. So I did the math. So we've spent 23% of the dollars in the first round of funding that are available for rental assistance, and we've obligated, meaning we've basically approved folks for 44% of that first round of funding. So.
Yes, quick question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, this is Maurice. A quick question. You mentioned earlier that I guess JP Sanders had an initial concern or problem with the program. Can you elaborate on that and how, I guess, that's transitioned now for him to, I guess, receive it a little bit better?
So I don't know if you know Judge Sanders. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the past, but he has a really big heart, and he was extremely frustrated when he was seeing the evictions coming through his court. And we were all in a ramp up and learning stage. The state was with their program. They had a pretty big learning curve. We had some frustration where people applied. They really weren't sure where they applied. Did you apply at the county, at Arlington? Did you apply at the state? The county would redirect them to us, so that would work out really well. But over time, as we've refined our processes, things are going, the applications are coming in quicker. It's easier, much easier for people to apply. The barriers have been knocked down. Previously, with the way the Treasury wanted the documentation, we needed, for example, 2 months of bank statements. Well, now we ask, how much do you have in your bank account? I have $600. I don't need your bank account. You're not earning any money on the $600. It's going to put you over income. We don't need to wait for you to be able to get that document and bring it to our office or email us that document. I got one pay stub because it just came in the mail, but I don't have the other one. I don't know how to navigate my HR to get the other one. That's okay. We're just going to look at your year to date and we're going to move forward. I don't have anything from my daycare saying that the cost went up. That's okay. You can sign a self-attestation saying that happened. You can catch up that documentation another time. So we can move quite a bit quicker on this. So I think it also helps that we've got, now that we've got more staff on board, we can have more staff present in Judge Sanders' courthouse. So.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And if I could, again, because I know that having somebody in the courthouse is important to him as well. Also, you mentioned that you're working with the North Texas Legal Aid and Texas A&M and a couple other groups. How is that working from their side? What can you tell us what they're seeing and what they're having to deal with and what it looks like from their side?
Sure. So there's a lot of little moving pieces to it, and I'll give you an example. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas can only serve people under a certain income limit. Well, that doesn't align with this program. We can serve people way over their income limit, so they can serve a portion of the people that we can help. So that's a little bit frustrating, and that's why we pulled in Texas A&M Law School, because we think that we will fund an attorney that will be specific to representation in Arlington. And honestly, with the Unity Council's recommendation, I would love to see that as something that's permanent, if we can develop a funding source for it. I think that would just be a wonderful asset to the citizens that we have here for all of our low-income families. Again, 85% chance of staying in your home.
Could you repeat that? What is it that you said you needed?
I said I would really like to have that right to counsel program, a permanent program, not just during COVID.
Okay.
And so we're looking like, my staff doesn't love this, but I tend to look at every avenue possible and start moving down those roads and then find the one that's going to work the best and which one I can get to the end fastest, but legally, right? Because we've got procurement and all those crazy things that we have to deal with. So the county was going to have a contract with Legal Aid of Northwest Texas for legal representation, which would be a county-wide contract. So we thought, well, that's wonderful. We can contribute to that contract and we've got representation. Well, then we dug a little more and we realized that's going to serve part of the population, but not all of the population, because some are going to be over income for Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. So we need another solution. And then ultimately the county decided they're only going to serve the county outside of Arlington and outside of Fort Worth. So now we need to enter into our own contract with either Legal Aid of Northwest Texas and or Texas A&M Law School, or honestly, I just recently got a referral of an attorney that would love to get involved in something like this. And this is what they do. They do eviction law. So if I have the opportunity to contract directly with an attorney, I'll do that. So kind of moving in a couple different ways to see how we can get there.
Yeah. Okay, because I know you said you're all playing in the same sandbox, but you know, you have your own little pieces, parts of the sandbox. And so I guess we need legal aid for each person in the sandbox.
Yep. So.
Okay.
Is anybody going to ask me about fraud?
I wasn't, but if you want to elaborate.
Well, yes.
Well, we have TVs and newspapers, so I'm pretty sure we've all heard of the fraud. I guess our main focus was to ensure that more people knew about the rental assistance that is available, because you all have a ton of money. We have 500,000, 400 and something thousand people who live in Arlington, and for you to get one round of money for 12 million and another round for like 4 or 5 million, that's a lot of money for such a small population. So I guess our main focus is not so much on the fraud, but as more as getting this word out to so many people that we know are in need. I know that we are hoping that this thing is all almost over, but as we continue to watch the news every day and we see that this Delta variant is way more deadly than the original COVID variant that we had. So we are seeing, all of the hospitals being filled up for the children's hospitals. And the last thing that I heard on the news today was that there were less than 300 beds in the whole state of Texas. So we definitely want to make sure that people know that, because I'm just anticipating more companies are going to close, because as I drive down 360 and see all of those restaurants that used to be open that are no longer there, all that space is for lease. So I can just see that this is going to trickle into some other companies, and maybe that, all of the money that you guys have, it may be needed by people more than one time. So how does that work if somebody says, you know what? Yeah, I did find a job. I know you helped me before. I found a job, and then this job had to lay me off.
That's okay. That's okay.
They're eligible. Be available for a second round of funding.
Yes, they're eligible for a total of 18 months of assistance, and it does not have to be consecutive. So if we were able to help you for 4 months, we got you caught up, we paid you 3 months forward, so that was 7. You got a job, things were great. Schools closed again. Mom had to stay home. Dad had to stay home. Whoever wanted to stay home, and they lost their income again. We have 5 more. Well, how much did I say? 7. We have another 11 months of assistance, because we can do a total of 18 months of assistance per household.
Okay, awesome. And I know originally when we first started our exchange of trying to figure out how we're going to get the word out to everyone, there was a lot of difficulty because there was a ton of paperwork that people needed. And, listening to you earlier, you seemed that you guys have kind of mitigated some of that paperwork, just found us some different ways of trying to circumvent all of the red tape. But I know that there's still some documents that you guys are going to have in hand, that you're going to have on file for the federal government. So when that is the case, how long does a person have before you all close their application and said, hey, we've been dealing with you for 30 days, 60 days, and you still haven't come up with all of the documents? We have to move on to the next person. So how long does a person have to gather all of this stuff?
So we're really, really flexible. If we don't hear from them, if we've reached out, we've called, we've emailed, we're not hearing from anybody, we'll send them a letter and we're just going to let them know that we're closing their file. However, if 2 weeks later they call us and say, I still need help, we'll open it right back up. It's not start over. It's not submit a new application. There's no reason for that. That doesn't help them. It doesn't help us. It's just more paperwork. So,
Okay, I'm sorry. What was that time period again?
from the time they're non-responsive, well,
Yes.
generally we'll send them a letter letting them know that we're giving them another 10 days. And basically what we're going to stop doing is we're going to stop reaching out. So we're going to close the file, set it aside, and go on to the next one. But again, if they reach it back out again, we're happy to assist them. So we've got a lot of files that are kind of on pause, just waiting for the response. And generally what we see happen is that eviction eventually gets filed and they reach back out very quickly. Or their financial situation becomes worse and it just becomes a little bit more desperate and they just can't make it. And they'll reach back out. So.
Okay, and another issue that we had, and then I'll let you move on to the chat, is to see if you guys have resolved that. Have people being able to apply on their mobile devices versus like a paper copy? Is that resolved?
Yes, they can apply on their mobile phone. They can do it on a computer or a tablet. If they choose to, they can come in and fill out an application and just leave it in our lobby. They can mail it in, they can fax it in, they can email it in. Again, they can submit it directly online. And we've had people call and we have just taken their application over the phone for them. And if they need that assistance, we're happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Mindy. I'm sure I've seen a few questions go over, so
sure. I see one that says, please talk about the fraud and waste. How can we best use the money we may save? So I'll do the first part is talk about the fraud and the waste. I work really, really hard and I pay a lot of taxes and I want my taxpayer money that's going to programs like this to help people. The area where we're seeing fraud is where the landlord chooses not to participate. And so we pay the tenant. And then the tenant in turn is supposed to turn around and pay their rent. And those are the cases where that's where probably most of the fraud is. We have not had a lot here in Arlington, which I'm really happy to hear. We try and scare everybody half to death so that they don't even consider that as an option because they want to stay housed. We did have one case where we paid probably about $6,000 and the family decided they were going to keep that money. They didn't feel like they were going to be able to continue to pay their rent, so they chose to move into a hotel. And so we reached out to them and said, we can pay for your hotel and we can pay for your first month's rent and deposit to get you into a new apartment if you go pay the landlord the money we gave you the first time. So that conversation is continuing. We'll see how that turns out. We had another case where we had an applicant looked online, saw that the state had paid his rent. So we said, we can't pay your rent for those months because the state has already paid your rent. He said, the state has not paid my rent. So we got a copy of the check, the endorsed check. And this gentleman had endorsed his check. He had paid his rent. So he was kind of caught. He knew the gig was up and he brought the money in and he gave it to his landlord. So that was good. It was a good happy ending. I hear from the US Treasury though, that, and this is a horrible statistic, they can't investigate cases under $150,000 because they have so many fraud claims right now. And that's really scary to me. So where I feel like we've knocked down the barriers as much as possible, feel like we're kind of in that sweet spot right now to where we are not going to have that kind of program fraud. We're going to help the tenants, we're going to help the landlords, and we're going to be good stewards of our taxpayers' dollars. Now, when we pay a tenant that has past due rent, we pay him up to $2,500 of his past due rent. Once they've made that payment to the landlord, then we release the rest of it. But that limits our exposure to $2,500 of funds that are not going to where they're intended to go. So, and so far we've had a lot of luck with that. We had a case not long ago. They were 18 months past due. That's the limit of the program. So I'm cutting a check to a tenant for 18 months of rent, and the tenant knows I'm not paying their rent next month. They had every incentive not to pay that rent, and they paid their landlord. So they did the right thing. And thus far, we're seeing really good success with that. So we're very, very happy. Very happy.
Well, thank you so much, Mindy. It's comforting to know that there wasn't a lot of fraud in the city of Arlington and that people are utilizing the funds for what they need to be utilized for.
Yeah.
And my second question was going to be some of the success stories that you've had in helping people. And that was definitely just one. Someone who wasn't able to pay their rent for a year and a half. And you all were able to help them and make them whole with the landlord and to kind of give them an equal playing field to kind of try and recover and recuperate their lifestyle. So these are definitely good stories.
The best part of that is, you know, I talked earlier about we don't want to take somebody up to the edge of the cliff and then let them fall off, right? Mm-hmm. Well, she's at the edge of the cliff. She's had 18 months of rental assistance and she's not eligible for any more. But I started by saying we're really fortunate that here in Arlington, our housing authority is part of our city because we have a lot of other programs. They're not pandemic specific, but they're pandemic eligible. So we were able to take this young lady and get her in. The landlord wasn't willing to have her stay after those 18 months. So we were able to get her into an extended stay hotel. She's working with caseworkers who are trying to help her get reemployed, and we'll help her with first month's rent and deposit until she gets back on her feet. So we have a lot of other flexible programs. And so, like I said, we're just very fortunate that the way that we're set up here, we kind of have this whole like alphabet soup, HHSP, ESG, CDBG, TRAP, all these alphabet soup of programs that we can say, this is a good fit for you and we can continue to help you. So.
Thank you so much. So I don't have any additional questions for you, Mindy. I don't know if there's some additional questions in the chat because I can't see them.
No, I believe we covered everything that's in the chat.
Okay. Well, Mindy, do you have anything that you would like to say additionally? If not, then I would turn it over to our Vice President, Dwayne Brexton, and he can close us out.
Yeah.
No, the only thing I would add is that I put our website in the chat. And so that if you are, it's really easy to remember, arlingtonhousing.us. You'll see the green buttons there for the application. So just drive people to our website. It's the easiest way to apply. And just, I ask their patience and we will help them. We will get to them. We're doing our best to find a way to make everybody eligible. And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Dwayne?
Bye-bye.
Mindy, thank you so much. That was very informative. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to speak to all of our branch members this evening. Anything that we can do to assist you, please don't hesitate to contact Jill and the rest of our committee members that have been working with you.
Thank you.
So again, thank you so much for your time. If we don't have any other further questions for Mindy, we will sign off. And thank you everyone for attending this evening. Look forward to seeing you at our next meeting in October. Thank you and good night.